Okay, let's take a little look at a weekly outlook to see what we can expect from gold and from GBP JPY over the next week. So we'll start with gold. On the weekly outlook, we can see that last week we had quite a bullish push off of this key area of support around this sort of 1810 area. Now that was quite expected, and it was explained in our weekly outlook last week, and that came true as of Friday. So it was a very good sort of prediction and anticipating what gold would do throughout last week. And the reason for that is if we look back to the 30th of January, so basically the start of February was when we started this push down. So we have to at some point expect a little pullback to then see the sellers come back in and push us down a little bit further and continue with the idea of that dollar domination at the moment, which is going to continue for some time, we would expect. So looking down on a daily time frame, you can see again all of last week was basically bullish, just kind of pushing us up and just approaching a very key area which we'll touch up on just a little minute or two. So just kind of going down to this intraday time frame on the 4 hours at this point. And then you can see a little bit clearer what our prediction was last week, and you can see that it basically followed that trend almost to the T, which was very nice indeed. So if we just get rid of some of those markups and have a little look at this a little more, what we're actually approaching now is a very key area around this sort of 1860, 1865 area. So if I just mark that up to kind of give you a little bit of a clearer outlook on that, and that would be that key area of interest for me at this moment in time, because what I believe will actually happen is whether we get a little bit of play around here at the start of the week, and then we'll end up with a continuation perhaps up to this 1865 area to potentially then see the sells come down from there. Similarly, we may not get quite as high as that 1865 area, maybe 1858 to 1860, to see those sell opportunities come in from that point. Either way, I believe that this coming week we will likely see the dollar domination come back in. We'll start to see the idea of those gold bears coming in, and we'll see some sell-off in the price action throughout next week. That would be what I would anticipate is likely to happen. Now we do need to factor in that we've got news coming up this week, so let's take a look at our news in terms of red folder and orange folder news. And I guess the most important one to try and kind of point out is coming up towards the back end of the week, where we look at the unemployment rate in the US, and that's obviously going to be a good indication of how strong the US dollar is. So just to make that really clear, the reason that that's a good indication for us is because if we've got a lower unemployment rate, that means that there is more spending perhaps going to be happening in their economy, therefore strengthening the economy, therefore strengthening the US dollar, and therefore weakening anything that's paired up against it, for example gold and so on. And that would be a likely outcome. Again, if you look at the fundamentals that are all at play, the expectation is we will see some good sell-off opportunities on gold over the next week or so. So in summary, with gold, I fully expect that we will see perhaps just a little push to the upside, and then we will see return for the sell-off opportunities a little further down the line. And again, if we were kind of looking at that on the 1 hour, we would see that kind of key area come in. If we just look at that 1865 area a little further along, that is a really good key area of interest. Look at all of these places where it provided support back in February, and then when we've resisted that area numerous times a little further into February before a big sell-off. So that will be quite interesting to see. The other thing that's actually worth noting as well is we've just kind of started to form a real sort of pattern that we see occur quite often, where we see this sort of like little bit of sideways movement coming down, we get a little retracement, and then we see a big push to the downside after that. And again, this, like I say, this is something that we see time and time again. If we just look to the left here, similar kind of thing, we get a little bit of sideways pull back, and then we get a big drop down after that. Again, a little bit of sideways, we get a little bit of a pullback, and we get a big drop down. This is a similar pattern that we see time and time again on the gold chart. So I'm fully expecting that again. We've gotten a little bit of time done along here. We've gotten the pullback, we got the sell-off, bit of time, we get a pullback, sell-off, and so on. So I'm fully expecting that this will start to play out the same again, little bit of time, pullback, and we'll see the sell-off coming very soon. So that's what I'm expecting for gold over this week. So if we're going to kind of mark that up, we may see just a little bit of this sort of thing going on, to then see a sell-off ultimately coming later in the week perhaps. But there'll be a lot of people waiting around to see what that news is, especially on Friday. But it is worth noting there's a couple other bits of news popping out on Wednesday and so on. Of course, whenever Powell speaks as well, that brings a lot of traction with it, so it'll be worth keeping an eye out on those various different bits as well. Let's take a little look at GJ now, and we'll see what we can expect from GJ this week. The first thing to note, if we look at the weekly, you can see that we had a big rejection of this key area last week. Now, in my outlook last week, I said that GJ was likely to continue its upward bullish move, and our target last week, if you remember, was this 166.20 area, which is just exactly where we hit. But I think we actually managed that around Tuesday, so that played out very nicely, but it actually played out really early on in the week. So there we are, it was Tuesday when we actually managed to hit that target area, and then we rejected off that target area, and we actually closed for the week under this little area of resistance, which could be quite important. Now you can see that on Friday, while we closed on Friday, we weren't actually able to engulf Thursday's daily candle, which could be a good sign to us potentially that what we might see when the market opens this week is we may see another attempt of this area to try and test the resistance, and then find that we actually sell off to this key area towards this 161.70-ish area. So if I just kind of mark that off for you, just to give you a little bit of an idea, that looks on the daily like a very good area of interest. So one scenario would be that we retest this little area here, and who knows how that kind of might play out, but ultimately we would be looking for a really nice clean area to try and fill below here on the daily. Okay, let's just kind of get rid of that for a little second and look on the 4-hour intraday level. And now the same thing would look good here. The other thing to obviously consider would be if we could get a 4-hour candle which would then end up actually closing above here, because then what we might get is a little test of that area. We may see a little retest to then go and fill to the upside. That would be entirely plausible as well, and it very much depends on a lot of different factors. So those would be the two possible scenarios where we would have to start and stay a little bit adaptive. So we may just see kind of a little retest, something along those lines on GJ. That's what I'd be looking at. Now in terms of trying to stay sharp and adaptive with those various different scenarios, let's see how that would play out on the 1 hour. So personally, for it's entirely up to you, but for me, in the way that I trade, I'll be looking for a nice clean break below this sort of 163 area, any break below that 163 area, and then we would have a nice move for probably about 30 something pips, and if we broke that area of 162.70, we look pretty clean all the way down from that point. Similarly, looking on the 1 hour, if we got a nice clean break above this area here, this 163.85, 86 area, got a nice clean break there, we've got a nice push up to the 164.30, and again, if we manage to break above there and retest that area, we could see this nice big clean zone start to press towards filling that area. So with GJ, it's going to be a case of staying a little bit adaptive. There's been news with the Bank of Japan recently, and just trying to kind of keep up with what their different take on things are at the moment. At the moment, they seem quite hawkish about things, so it'll be worth keeping up to date with what they're doing. And of course, we'll have to try and kind of keep up with any news that comes out to do with the British pound as well. Looking down the list, it looks like the most effective one will be on Friday. It looks like we've got some news coming out on Friday, looking at the GDP, so we'll have a little look at what that comes in at. And of course, it's very much worth looking at what the forecast is, which is 0.1%. We'll see if we come in above that, which would then obviously give us a little bit of a push on Friday morning on GG. So again, stay quite adaptive with that one. We'll have to see how that one pans out, but either way, we've got some nice clean ranges to try and fill, so potentially some better priced action than what we've seen over the last week or so, because that's been quite horrific at times with a lot of sideways movements. So stay adaptive. Those would be some good areas to try and fill. If you are looking for any more information with regard to fundamentals to base your trading on, I can personally highly recommend Capital Hungry. That man is absolutely brilliant in terms of keeping you up to date with all the financial fundamentals and the different factors that can affect the movement in the market. So I can highly recommend him. I'm not getting anything by recommending him. I simply follow him myself for all of the fundamental news to try and keep up to date and just keep that little edge on the market as well. So that is your roundup for the week, just to try and see what's coming up with the week ahead. Good luck with your trading, and if you need anything else, feel free to mention them in the comments. And if you like the video and you want some more, feel free to like it, subscribe, and follow me on the various different social channels as well.